Hello Frons and welcome back to Quarantent, light, fluffy video essay content to distract us all from the outside world. And today, I want to talk about these. My husband and housemate have been communicating like a 1/3 in Lord of the Rings memes for a while, and I don't get them. I really want to, they think they're really funny, and I want to know why. I mean, the most logical option I've found is to break down the memes and delve into the psychology of humour. That's the most simple way forward, right? See, I'm a huge comedy nerd in both production and consumption. I've been a stand-up comic for about 5 years, I wrote my dissertation about sitcoms, and generally I love a well-crafted joke. I'm also a proper, amateur psychology nerd. I'm not formally trained in any of it, but from an outside perspective, it's some pretty fascinating stuff. I've done a fair bit of, casual research, but funnily enough, I've never delved into the psychology of humour. It's like that old quote, explaining humour is a lot like dissecting a frog. You learn a lot in the process, but in the end, you kill it. So, let's kill some Lord of the Rings memes. I think the first part of this is discussing why memes in general are funny, specifically, memes that are reliant on reference to pop culture. As an aside, before we delve into it, did you know that the Wikipedia page for Internet Meme has an entire subsection called Dank Memes? Me neither, before now. Anyway, moving on. I wanted to introduce something called the mere exposure effect. It's a psychological phenomenon that was first researched in the 1970s by a dude called Gustav Fechner, but it was best documented 90 years later in the 60s by Robert Zajonc. I should have looked these up. Anyway, Robert demonstrated that simply showing people something they had seen before caused them to rate it more positively than something very similar but brand new. At first, Robert looked at language and the frequency of words used, but then he found out that things like polygons, drawings, photographs of expressions, and even nonsense words like afwarbu and lokanta, and even they were rated more positively when they were more familiar to people. In 1989, Robert Bornstein did a meta-analysis of a whole bunch of mirror exposure experiments and found that not only was it definitely a thing, he found that there were special criteria that enhanced the effects of the mirror exposure effect. These effects mirror perfectly onto meme culture, which is why I'm bringing the effect up in the first place. First off, the positive effects are stronger when the stimulus is shown for a brief amount of time, for example, a still image as a reaction to a joke tweet. The effect is also at its strongest after 10 or 20 exposures to the stimulus, which is why the life cycle of a meme is so hyper-accelerated. Additional exposure may even make people dislike the stimulus, which is why you hate that pop song that is played on every radio station all the time. And finally, delay between exposures makes the effect stronger again, which is why I think Lord of the Rings memes right now are so prevalent. Fellowship of the Ring came out 19 years ago at time of recording. That's definitely some time. So all this points to, why are references so funny? I mean, there's no punchline there, just the acknowledgement of the thing that we both know exists. Well, before we delve into theories of humour, because that is a whole thing, I want to talk about that last sentence again. A thing we both know exists is a key here, because I want to talk about in-groups again. Specifically, in-group favoritism. In-group favoritism is simply preferring people that you perceive as being in the same in-group as you. Now, last time we talked about in-groups and out-groups, it was in a far heavier aspect, but today we're focusing on the lighter aspects of it. In-group favoritism was first discussed by William Sumner in 1906, when he said, "Each group nourishes its own pride and vanity, boasts itself superior, exists in its own divinities, and looks with contempt on outsiders." Basically, you treat people better if you perceive them as in your group. It's very likely that your group might mean somebody who watches the same movies as you, right? Now, this is a huge group considering that Middle-earth movies make up the 9th highest grossing film franchise in the world, but the size of the group isn't important. What's important is that the group exists, and if someone makes a reference that you get, you're both in that group. You're more likely to be nice to them, for example, laughing at their jokes, because you're in that group. But that's kind of why reference humour is a thing in the first place. It's pretty simple, but there we go. So, theories of humour. This is a huge topic, massive. I mean, look at the Wikipedia page for this shit. The psychology behind why humans laugh at things is massive, especially when you factor in not only why they find things funny, but why do they actually laugh? Why that noise? But all these huge and well thought out theories are awesome, but there's one in particular that I think is very relevant. Incongruous juxtaposition. So incongruous juxtaposition, what on earth does that mean? Well, put it simply, it means the theory suggests that the root of humour is when one thing follows another that goes against logic and reason. For example, a joke becomes funny when you think one thing is going to happen, yet the result is something completely different. When we hear a joke, our minds and our bodies are already anticipating what is going to happen and how this story is going to end. In the world of reference memes, this is especially true, considering they're mostly quotes slipped into regular conversation. Anyway, this anticipation takes the form of logical thought, which is then interpreted into emotion. When the joke goes in an unexpected direction, our thoughts and emotions suddenly have to change and adapt. In other words, we experience two sets of incompatible thoughts and emotions simultaneously. This incongruity of thought and emotion is experienced as humour, and the term incongruous juxtaposition was coined by Arthur Schopenhauer. For example, you're talking with your friend. It's around 10:30, you're complaining about how you're feeling hungry even though you had a big breakfast. You're expecting to be recommended a snack or to, wait until lunchtime, but what you get is, well, what about second breakfast? It's that disconnect between what you expected and what you got that makes the reference funny, especially when combined with the things we discussed earlier. But there's a little more to it than that. I mean, yeah, hearing a quote can be a bit of a disconnect, but it's not a proper bit of juxtaposition, is it? To further enhance that, we need to look at the writing style of Tolkien. The way he writes, and therefore the way the film was scripted, it's very different to natural human dialogue. It's flowery and descriptive, but mostly using commonplace words. This in itself is a weird juxtaposition. Usually scripts are either really commonplace or really flowery and descriptive. So this weirdly effective mishmash of styles creates a form of language that isn't very natural or human sounding. So when someone seamlessly slips into a bit of Tolkien-esque speech in the middle of a conversation, it creates an additional level of incongruous juxtaposition. The same kind of thing can be seen with prequel memes, but instead of unusual but effective dialogue, it's just bad and awkward sounding. So that's why Lord of the Rings memes are funny. It's a mixture of feeling included and talking weirdly. It's simple as that. And I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please click the like and subscribe buttons down below. They are very ripe for the picking. And if you're new here, make sure to click that subscribe button. And if you really liked this video, please check out my Patreon like the lovely people on screen right now. And special thanks to the fresh cheese bags of the month, NeuroticAnarchy, the Magpie Magus, Whatwouldjedido, Kozmosaur, Ethan Safron, and Karl Raade. And as I say around here, I'll catch you on the flippity flop. Love you, bye.